Distinguished attendants, welcome to our session. We are out of our time, and we are the last stop between you and the lunch break. We are the only obstacle between you and the lunch break, and we will use our time as efficiently as we can, and we will try to finish the session as fast as we can. We have many important, valuable guests. Ibrahim Çeçen, the chairman of the board of the IC Holding, Mehmet Kutman, the chairman of the board Global Investment Holdings, Mehmet Özer, head of department, director general of the Health Investments of Turkey, Nafi Güral, NG Group chairman, and Hüseyin Arslan, chairman of the executive board of YDA Holding. With your permission, I would like to start with Ibrahim Çeçen. Mr. Ibrahim, your groups have invested heavily on infrastructure, and those investments are going on both in Turkey and also in abroad. And such kind of investments were the driving force for the development in Turkey. Very briefly, what would you like to say about the growth is coming from such kind of investments in Turkey? And do you see any challenges for the sustainability of such investments? Good afternoon to everyone. Before answering your question, I would like to define what is infrastructure and what is infrastructure composed of. And I also would like to give some figures about the infrastructure investments, both in Turkey and also at the global scale. Infrastructure is comprising high roadways, railways, ports, and also any sort of investments that are made in these fields and also in the energy sector. The infrastructure investments are really important for the development of the economy. For the countries to develop their economies and for the welfare of the societies, infrastructure is one of the key components. If I give you some statistic, you will understand the importance of infrastructure. In 2016, there was $256 billion of investment made to energy. In the second place, the transportation sector made investment by $127 billion. What is the need for infrastructure investments? In G20 meeting in Shanghai, OECD General Secretary made a statement, and he said that in the upcoming 5 years, $93 trillion will be invested for the global infrastructure. That's what he said. And Donald Trump said that $1 trillion of investment will be made for the aging infrastructure of the USA. According to Asian Development Bank reports, up until 2030, the need for infrastructure investment is $26 trillion for the Asian continent. What is the contribution of infrastructure to the economy? According to IAT's data, it has been shown that the infrastructure is contributing a lot to the economy. 1% of increase in the infrastructure investments will translate into 0.08% of GDP increase. Although it varies from region to region, in the MENA region, the infrastructure investment translates into 0.17 and 0.21% of GDP increase. Of course, the infrastructure investment is translating into the improvement in the employment. 1% of infrastructure investment will translate into 0.07% of employment, and those figures are even greater in the developed countries. And if we take a look to the MENA region once again, the infrastructure investments will translate into direct and indirect employment opportunities. If we evaluate and analyze those figures and statistics, you can easily understand that the sustainability of the infrastructure investments will indeed make the economy solid and strong. In Turkey, especially in the recent years, important mega projects have been carried out. Those mega projects have contributed to the economy on terms of employment and also improving the welfare of the society. Therefore, making those investments sustainable will also have a positive effect on the morale and the motivation of our company or our country. So we have to make those investments sustainable, and such millions of dollars, such trillions of dollars, even the capital of our treasury might not be sufficient for the sustainability of the investments. In the recent years, the BOT model indeed gained an impetus for our investments, and the ROI is quite investment in such models. I'm speaking about the build, operate, and transfer models. As a result, making such investments might solve the problems of the countries, and at the same time, since they have high ROI, they might open new pathways for the further investments. In that regard, I do believe such investments should be deemed as the driving force for the sustainable development. Very briefly, I would like to raise a question for you. In the recent sessions, it has been also discussed that there were some problems in terms of finding the necessary financing tools. Did you experience such a challenge in terms of finding your financial tools? First of all, as those projects are known by the market, indeed, the financing institutions are defining the rules before such tenders. And since these projects will definitely bring profit, then we don't have any challenge in terms of finding the financial sources. For example, the airport projects that we have carried out so far indeed return their investments in 3 or 4 years. I mean, for such investments which has such a short time in terms of giving its return in 3 years or 4 years, you will have no indeed problems in terms of finding the resources. For example, the bridge on the Gulf side of Istanbul has been indeed done for a period of 21 years or 22 years. It is a really big investment, and we didn't have any problems in terms of finding the financial tools. The capacity that our banks have in the recent years and the priority that our banks give to such projects is a huge advantage for us to find financial tools. We don't have any problems in terms of finding the financial tools, not only in Turkey, but also in the global scale. It is easy for us to receive our credit from abroad. Let's continue with Mr. Mehmet. Your group is actually uh, quite operational in different fields. You are present in energy sector, in the financial sector. Can you speak about your midterm or long-term agenda? What kind of risks are you expecting? What will be your agenda for the midterm and the long term? Before speaking what we do, I also would like to say a couple of things about what is an infrastructure. Unfortunately, for a very long year, the infrastructure investments were not carried out in Turkey. And that's why there was a demand which was accumulated for long years. If you take a closer look to the figures, if I'm not mistaken, between 2000 and 2015, 270 billion euros of investment was made for the infrastructure. At the same time period, approximately 100 billion euros were invested for the infrastructure. So since as Turkey we are coming behind, we have to do such investments as fast as possible. And we shouldn't exaggerate on those investments. Some of the investments are quite absolute. This is an absolute investment for airport. And the last time we came here, Mr. Nihat was with me, and the investment for the third airport is the right airport. Of course, we want our contractors to unite, and so that this hyperloop mechanism is established in Turkey. This will be enough for the Turkey, and this Hyperloop mechanism started investments between Dubai and Emirates, and such kind of investments are also done because of this mechanism also in the Czech Republic. And this is among the investments that the Turkey can really handle. And this is my actually message I really wish to be conveyed to the Ankara, to the government. I'm not sure whether we will be seeing it or not, but most probably your children and your grandchildren will see it. And there will be a huge change in the transportation sector in the 30 or 40 years' time. In the bridges, the cars will not be passing, and everything will be changing about the transportation, and Turkey will also experience it. Speaking about my company, I also would like to say that we started to target the foreign markets because if you are not a construction company, it is not possible for you to do the business because the construction companies have a huge competitive advantage. I believe in 14 or 15 different places, the Turkish flag is indeed present because of our investments, and hopefully in the Caribbean region we will make in our ports, the cruiser ports, the Turkish flag presence. And in 2018, hopefully our cruiser ports will be finalized. In Miami, there was a Seagate fair, and the biggest booth belonged to us, and unexpectedly 317 of the visitors came to our stand, to our booth, and we had been given a certificate for our success that we showed with the amount of the visitors that we received. And in terms of the sector of cruiser ports, we became a global brand, and there is no other brand like our brand, and this is indeed quite honoring us. But on the general terms, I can say that we are experiencing such harsh times, and this is also the case for the globe. I mean, the problems are not only existed for Turkey. On one side, we have the Donald Trump problem. On the other side, there is Marine Le Pen. The risks are also present in Austria, in Netherlands, and also in the Germany. So With the 2008 crisis, the results of the quantitative easing is quite visible, and that translated into indeed an inequality in the distribution of the income, which brought about, by the way, populism, and most probably the populism will last for another 4 years or 5 years, but after that, after most probably from 2025 will be the most beautiful times for the world. Thank you very much. Another sector in which the investments are going on with full extent is the investments in the health sector. Hopefully, better results will be taken in such sectors. And health tourism is an important potential for Turkish economy as well. Turkey has a huge potential in the health sector. We see many people with the hair transplant. So there is indeed a move. There is a revitalization in this field. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Nafi Bey. What can you say about the potential of Turkey in the health sector in terms of investment, and what can Turkey do in order to better position itself? Before initiating my speech, I would like to thank the president of Capital and Economist magazines, and the summit is much more organized every passing year, and all of our attendants benefited a lot from this summit. Distinguished attendance, whenever I have to evaluate a topic, I made a SWOT analysis and I come to a decision on that topic. And I also try to evaluate 5Ws. I indeed asked the 5W questions, and then I added 1B, which is the budget analysis. First of all, in the health sector, I believe we should question what kind of a country we are. The population is increasing by 1.3% each year. This means that every year our population is increasing by 1 million. This is important, and in order to explain its importance, I would like to say that every 5 years, a population of Denmark, Ireland, or Finland is added to our general population. If you look for the 10 years of time, Greece, Austria, Czech Republican population will be added to our general population. In the Europe, after than the Germany, we are the second most highly populated country, and most probably in 2023 we will be the #1 country with the most highly populated, with the most population. Of course, the population will have a contributing force for the development of the countries. And in addition to trigger the development, we are investing on the infrastructure. In the 15th century, the concept of slavery emerged. The countries which were using slaves tried to fulfill their labor force with the slaves. For about 500 years and 600 years, there is a need for the labor force. And the Europe in the 1950s and 1960s, indeed, specifically Germany, attracted labor force from the developing countries. And if we have the right infrastructure, then we have to make use of our potential. Thermal tourism is quite important, and in the health sector, I know 3 important pathways. One of them is treatment, the other one is care, and the third important sector is the sector of aesthetics. I would like to focus on the care and care sector, and the thermal care is quite important for health tourism. I really would like to recommend you to go on the website and see the benefits of the thermal water. If underground water, if you see the benefits of the underground water, then you will see that these waters, these underground waters, has so many benefits that you cannot even imagine. Especially the ones who are using those underground waters will have a tight skin, especially the women. They will not have wrinkles, and thermal water and the underground water will have a healing effect on the skin of the ladies and also on their hairs. The people who are visiting those thermal sites are indeed collecting those waters, and they are using those water as a spray, and they are using it as a cure, and they believe that this water is revitalizing their skins. Non-inflammatory joint pains might also be solved, and revitalization in the kidney functions and the liver functions might be another benefit of the underground water. So we have to make use of it to the most possible extent. And in order to do this, we should also invest in the human factor. Sometimes there is a misconception and misperception between the thermal facilities and also the hammams, the Turkish baths. TUI, a German company, would like to invest in our group, and we visited them, and they wanted to speak with us on the dinner. I was thinking that most probably they were not going to say anything to us. The first question I asked was, why did you invite us to Germany? And they told us that your thermal power, I mean your underground water, is not used efficiently, and we would like to make such thermal facilities to be used for health purposes. And they told us that we have many thermal facilities in the Europe, and our society knows those destinations, and they are seeking out for new destinations, and Turkey might be the next destination with the thermal facilities. And they told that Afyon might be the next destination for the Europeans, and they spoke about their expectations. And I also spoke about my expectations, about the expectations of the president of the Chamber of Commerce and the industry of the Afyon region. And based on their expectations, we started to invest on those areas. But unfortunately, the Gezi Park events unfortunately triggered a negative impact. I believe that this tension between us and Europe will not last long, because the countries should indeed get along with each other. The countries who tried to kill each other during the First World War and the Second World War now became partners. Just take a look at another example between USA and Japan. They bombed each other, but right now they are important trade partners. So these tensions will indeed leave its place to brotherhood and indeed alliances. Of course, our citizens should first benefit from these thermal facilities, and they should indeed wear that thermal guard. The president of TUI said that you are going to the thermal facilities whenever you are sick, but we are using thermal facilities, the underground waters, in order not to be sick. So that's why I believe the thermal facilities are quite important with its health healing characteristics, and it also provides us important opportunities for the indoor and closed activities. Once again, I really would like to benefit. I really would like you to benefit from the thermal water, and you will see after that you will be depending on the thermal facilities.
Sayın Mehmet Özer,
Mr. Mehmet Özer, I have just mentioned that some significant strides are made in the field of healthcare in Turkey. Could you please re-summarize the vision for us and what are the future plans? Valuable guests, let me greet you before starting. As you know, the PPP model became legally accepted in 2005. Our first tender started in 2009, and up until now, 21 projects have been undersigned. In total, we have 31 projects in our portfolio for PPP projects. Our total bed capacity for them is over 44,000. Out of them, about 31,000 of them have already been contracted, and 11 institutions have entered into force. We have Yozgat City Hospital, Mersin City Hospital, and Isparta Şehir Hospital, for example. They are already serving people as functional institutions. For the upcoming period, we have 2 tenders going on and 8 projects are being planned at the moment. They will correspond to another capacity of 12.5 thousand beds. But it should be noted that this is not going to be enough. Our need, our requirement is really vast. For every 10,000 people, we have 26.5 beds in Turkey. In OECD countries, the number is 50 beds in average. In Germany, it goes as high as 80 beds per 10,000 people. And taking into consideration the ever-growing population and the aging facilities we have, it seems to us that the infrastructural investments should continue without interruption. Our government would like to increase the average from 26.5 to 30 beds per 10,000 people by 2023. Let me ask you one thing. These are really large-scale investments, these city hospitals. It should be mentioned that in order for them to generate the desired effect, they should be managed really well. So I am really curious about the management. Is it under control? Well, we do increase capacity, but we need the support of medical personnel as well as robust management, as you said. We have had some new faculties of medicine that entered into force, as you know. In the upcoming years, we will have more and more physicians, medical staff, and nurses in the year. The planning is in place, actually. But what about the administration? Such large-scale institutions require fine administration. Well, when we invest in healthcare institutions, another directorate of our ministry, which is called Public Hospitals Administration, takes care of all the administrative services. We have the desired amount of administrative personnel in that regard. So, Mr. Hussein, let's go on with you. You are the chairman of the board of YDA Holding. I know that you are investing in this regard in transportation and in aviation mostly. What do you think about the current circumstances? And what are your medium to long-term plans? I would also like to start by thanking Capital and Economist journals for giving us this nice event, this great opportunity. For these 2 days, I have listened to really great presentations. It's really beneficial. Well, Mr. Mehmet already talked about the public side of the PPP. Right now, maybe I can give you a private perspective. This model should be understood really well because there are question marks and it is a misunderstood concept. As Mr. Mehmet said, the first tender started in 2009 in Kayseri. I know very well that throughout the 7 years, the doubts have been cleared largely, although there are still question marks. Let me first talk about this model and describe it correctly, because it's a globally recognized model, and in order to reach our goals for 2023, this is going to be an indispensable method. In the morning also, dear Minister briefly touched the advantages of the model. But the most basic advantage is that it takes the burden off from shoulders of the public when it comes down to large-scale building projects and even infrastructural projects. The state is normally charged with the task of doing this, but the financial load is really great. The private sector steps in at that point and shares the burden, eases the public burden in that regard. And as I said, this is really a long-standing model. I mean, even back in the Ottoman era, we know that private contractors were recruited by the Sultan in order to build waterways and passages. The advantage is that it eases the load on the public budget. When you are about to tackle about 60,000 beds of capacity, this means $20 billion of investment. The Ministry of Health, if it wants to do it itself, would have to take 20 years to invest that much. But thanks to this model, in only 3 to 4 years, we are able to complete these buildings, start operating them, and the state pays for it in 20 to 25 years. Second of all, there are some cost advantages we need to understand. And these are not really huge cost projects that the public usually claims to be, because there is a really large value. Maybe I can exemplify, because in the next panel there will be a real estate discussion. Maybe I can give them a perspective too. There is going to be this really familiar example. If you want to rent an office today in Istanbul, you would have to approximately pay $25 to $30 per square meter. That means $300 per year. So you have to decorate the interior of the office too. On top of it, you will have to pay for security, maintenance, and other expenditures of the entire building, because there are some expenditures you will have to take part in. As I am a real estate developer, I also know that building a business center, assuming 100 Turkish liras is going to be asked for every square meter, is not really so difficult at first glance. But when it comes to a hospital, you will have to bear 3 times that cost. And if you are asked to conduct turnkey, including all the medical equipment and devices, even including other decorations like curtains, upholstery, etc., the cost is really humongous. The state will be crushed under it. I mean, I have already told you about the example of an office. Well, considering these facts, I should tell you that right now these hospitals cost 375 Turkish liras per square meter annually for the state, thanks to the PPP model. A lot less than what it would usually cost. And on top of that, due to the private involvement, they become and turn out to be really quality buildings. You should also remember that there is no maintenance fee or other fees. I mean, even medical devices are provided by the contractor or the investor firm. What the investor is going to do is take care of the building for 25 years. This also ensures that the firm meticulously takes care of it, because they will have to deal with the consequences for 20 to 25 years. Every single detail is thought of. This means even at the beginning, at the investment stage, when you compare it to conventional tender processes, there will be specifications laid out, and all you do as a contractor is to fulfill those. We just follow the specifications as a private firm, take our money and leave. But if I am in charge for 25 years of that building, I will have to utilize quality material and pay attention to detail so that the real cost, not investment cost, is taken care of. The period of time has to be paid attention to as well. In the public sector, back in the day, when you started a tender for a building, a lot of the projects did not make it to the finishing deadline. There were resource allocation problems, there were changing specifications. I mean, you would have 3 years for a building as your deadline to make it serviceable, but it would never be 3 years. Right now, thanks to the PPP model, if our deadline is 3 years, we do our best to even complete the building before that period, because this means extra bonus for us. Take a look at the bridge which was undertaken by Mr. Ibrahim, and take a look at the Dalaman Airport. We completed it 1 year ahead of our deadline. It's beneficial for us, not only for the public. Again, let's go back to city hospitals. We have invested already in 4 of them. First one is Kayseri, then we have Manisa, Konya. YDA is going to invest more than $2 billion in them. According to the plan drafted for Kayseri, we have 2 to 2.5 years, for example, but hopefully in June, the Kayseri hospital is going to be completed. For Manisa, we have 1 more year, but we are going to have completed it in only 1 year. 2 of these city hospitals are serviceable at least 2 years in advance. Budgeting is another advantage. When you open a tender as the state, you conduct your planning and reach a conclusion about your ultimate costs. But due to the bureaucratic problems or resource allocation or any possible technical difficulties encountered during the process, no project ever makes it to the end on the budget that was allocated in the beginning. But we, as the contractors, remove this problem. We claim the budget that was allocated to us and we finance it ourselves. We have to be really meticulous about the planning so that it is not exceeded. The budget is adhered to. Again, when it comes to such large-scale investments, in addition to their economic added value, they contribute to employment status of a nation. Both during the construction investment period and after the completion, employment is really generated in the region. For example, in Kayseri, by the way we are done, we will have employed about 4,000 people. Finally, I need to mention technology transfer. We already have globally competitive firms. Let's think about the third bridge. A short while ago, our firms wouldn't even handle a small bridge, but right now we have the know-how. Our firms are in a state in which they can engage in global tenders. A serious level of know-how has been generated. Thank you. I will go on with Mr. Ibrahim. There are a lot of investments, that is true. But are we really able to transfer know-how in fields, in areas where added value is generated? When are Turkish investors going to undertake better positions? I mean, so far we see foreign firms undertaking the engineering side of things. So what do you think about the future? Well, this is kind of pressing on the correct button. Hussein already put it really well. As a company, a private firm, we are in charge of 2 hospitals too. The Mersin Hospital has already been offered to service. These were projects envisioned by our president, and they are really the pride of our country. These are entirely reforming for the country, because the hospitals will not just be serving our citizens. In the meantime, we will be, thanks to these hospitals, become a hub for incoming foreign patients. But we need to understand that both the public sector and the private sector are fresh starters. We require a lot more experience. The biggest deficiency we have right now is a lack of physicians. This can be tackled with the willing efforts of the Prime Minister and government officials. Hopefully that will be resolved soon, because these projects will create a lot of added value for the country. So about know-how, these are mega projects we are undertaking from an engineering perspective, from a civil engineering perspective, and from financial perspectives. They are exemplary projects. Maybe you would remember the first Bosphorus bridge, when it was opened to tender, attracted 4 foreign groups. The German and British partnership won it. In the second bridge, the tender was won by the Japanese group, and when it came to the third bridge, we did it by ourselves. It was also a proof of our prowess. During the tendering process, we had an Italian partner, but we had the majority shares. Therefore, it should be noted that a Turkish firm won that tender and completed the project. Engineering-wise, the third bridge of Istanbul is a really great example in its league. Technologically, it sets itself apart from other suspended bridges because we had to excavate more than 1 million cubic meters. We had to cast more than 2.5 million cubic meters of concrete, and we had to use 55,000 tons of steel. And this is not a conventional suspended bridge because suspended bridges are easy to construct. The third bridge is a hybrid bridge. It's both suspended and it's both tensile. It's a pioneering example in its area because it has to bear a lot of load. We had 200 engineers working on the project. They generated a specific level of know-how, but let's think about the recent tender for Çanakkale Bridge. The Japanese government mobilized its financial incentives and Korean government too in order to encourage their firms to take part. The Chinese government did the same thing, but we did not have such a facility. We cannot ask such incentives from the government in order to take part in the tenders. The Japanese Minister of Transportation came to Turkey, met the president, met our Minister of Transportation, similarly the minister from Korea and other ministers visited us too. Well, I said this to them as well, but I should mention it here too. If in the future there comes another tender in Japan, in Korea, in China, we won't have the same government force driving us forward. Therefore, when it comes to marketing our know-how to abroad, we have difficulties from the beginning. But our firm has already conducted activities in Russia, for example. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Putin has opened in Petersburg the Petersburg Circular Road. It is one of the largest infrastructural projects of Russia in recent years, and we handed them over to them. You can do this in Russia, but you can't transfer your know-how as a Turkish firm to other parts of the world, although it should be noted that right now in Turkey, not only our firm, but a lot of other Turkish firms have that know-how, that engineering knowledge and capacity. I can easily say that without any stain on my conscience. This is due to the fact that I am confident in the advancement of the Turkish construction sector. Probably this is going to be one of the most important outputs of this session. Our project management companies and construction companies already have a really good know-how, and we should be able to transfer it to the world. I need to add one thing that I forgot about. We are not just a construction company. We draft the project, we conduct implementation. We are actually an investor. And now we have another hat. We are also an operator. We are going to operate the third bridge. We are going to maintain it in winter. We will also take care of the highway that is connected to it. We will do this for 10 years. Mr. Mehmet, you have talked about the cruiser business. You have become an outstanding brand in that area. I am curious, is your business part of a bigger strategy? Are there other pieces to the puzzle, or are you going to be limited to that?
Abimizin söylediğine destek olmak açısından bizde de
In order to support what Mr. Ibrahim said so far, we didn't have the know-how, but we chose the easy way. We bought the port that was competing with us. I hope that Ibrahim Bey would do the same. Hopefully he would buy Vinci. And if he would like to do something like that, if he needs any financial support, we will do our best. We started the business by doing such, and in terms of our financing bodies, I can say that we have a huge support with one of the most important financial institute, and I hope that I will be able to acquire an important cruiser company. I'm not sure whether I will be able to do it or not, but up until now, what I targeted for, I was able to accomplish. In the recent times, there was in the news that the ships were not passing by the Turkish ports. Do you think we will be able to reverse that kind of a bad reputation? Yes, the government is supporting us, but unfortunately the winds of the populism, which is emerging in the United States of America and Europe, is also felt in here. Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi, for example, will be shoot as a movie. In the topic of the movie will be Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi, and I will be supporting that movie to be shot. And I believe I am one of the few people who has such close connections in abroad in the financial institutions. I don't think that there is such a bad reputation about Turkey, because Turkey is geopolitically in a strategic position. They dream all the time. Mr. Ibrahim explained it very well. The first bridge was done by the German, the second bridge was done by the Japanese. So the third bridge, maybe the upcoming bridges, will be made by the Turkish people. Of course, this gap will be closed in time. We need time to develop ourselves. Of course, problems are everywhere. In the United States, there is also problems. These problems will be temporary. What matters in here is to preserve the alliance and the brotherhood of the Turkish society, and I hope that the Turkish society will not lose its trust for the future generations. I don't see any problem for this year. Of course, the problems will be always in Turkey, because Turkey is quite important. We have sun, we have water, we have sea. There are natural resources. For example, Bahama, we are about to purchase land from Bahama, but there is nothing there. There is only water and sun. But when it comes to the Turkey, when it comes to the Istanbul, there are lots of beauties and natural resources. Mr. Mehmet, very briefly, I would like to ask you one question. In addition to the PPP projects, in the health sector, do you see a new wave of investments? In addition to the city hospitals, we also hope that we will be able to develop on the primary healthcare facilities. There are lots of studies going on because there is a need for those facilities. There is a need for opening those facilities to the service of the people, and the PPP model is a good model in that regard. Mr. Nafi, I would like to ask you very briefly, in the health sector, what are your short-term and long-term objectives? We are actually a group, and our basis is on the industry, and we are producing ceramics and porcelains, and we are among the top brands. You can ask me why we invested in this sector, and the answer will be as such. The health sector and the tourism sector are the sectors that are indeed quite appealing, and the appeal of those sectors are improving all the time. There is a problem in the tourism sector right now, but our facilities do not have such kind of problems. But what really should be done is that we should be able to develop strategies for attracting the foreign tourists, and the facilities should be developed according to that strategy. We have another facility with a capacity of 400 bed. I also would like to recommend investors to invest in the thermal facilities, and the investments to be made should target 5 stars or even more facilities. In the thermal sector, we don't have many facilities with such niche classes. So we have to integrate ourselves to the global market so that we can attract tourists for the thermal tourism. The licensing studies of our second facility is ongoing, and hopefully this facility will be completed at the end of 2018, and it will be operational at the beginning of 2019. Because I believe thermal facilities are advertising themselves. If you have a sleep disorder, when you go to the thermal facility, your sleeping disorder will most probably be solved. The people with the stress disorder are also claiming that their disorder is going away after coming to the thermal facilities. And in addition to that, the people with the burnout syndrome is healing when they come to the thermal facilities. In that regard, once again, I really want our investors to invest in these fields, in the thermal facilities, but we should not forget that the transportation to such facilities matter as well, and if possible, the transportation by air should be realized for the access to such facilities. And we should prepare ourselves for the tourists of the global system. Thank you very much. Very briefly, I would like to ask our last speaker, what is your projections for the future? Everybody is hungry, but if you can keep up with me only for 3 or 4 minutes, I will finish my speech in 3 or 4 minutes. We are speaking about the PPPs. Of course, different concepts are indeed used, like contractors, subcontractors, contracting companies, and such. But I also would like to say that the PPP concept should be embraced, because there is a huge difference in terms of partnership and cooperation. Since, the Ministry of Health is approaching to these projects like the partners, but the public side should really see us as the investor in such projects. We shouldn't be defined as the subcontractor anymore. Since I have this opportunity, I would like to raise that issue. Secondly, what we do as YDA Holding, what we are going to do as YDA Holding. With this PPP model, we have a couple of projects that we have invested. One of them is Dalaman Airport, and we have invested on 4 city hospitals. And hopefully, we will collect all those projects under the umbrella of a holding, and by making a public offering, hopefully, these hospitals and these projects will be funded. As Mr. Ibrahim mentioned already, different financing tools should also be present since these projects are huge projects. I'm sure you are following. We have been receiving many awards, and we have exported the bonds in order to satisfy our equities. And as we are doing this, we are convincing the foreigners to invest in the Turkish liras. And as YDA Holding, I really believe that the city hospitals projects was important in terms of the economic revolution in Turkey. My last sentence will be that our profits and our gains have been starting to be exported to the abroad, both in the Gulf countries, both in the Middle East countries, in Kazakhstan, in the Turkic states, and also in the African countries. Our expertise is started to be exported. And I also know that the Ministry of Health started to share its experiences in Sudan and also in Saudi Arabia. And since the ministry opened such pathways to us, it is an important opportunity for us for the further business. The PPP is an important gain for our country, and this gain is belonging to our society. And once again, I would like to thank, starting from our president and all the bureaucratic team who provided us this opportunity with the PPP projects. Thank you very much. I would like to thank all of our speakers. I would like to thank them for being present with us in here. And I also would like to thank them to continue investing in Turkey. If we continue to invest, then the problems we face with will be overcome the fastest way possible. There is only one Turkey. We will continue believing in Turkey, and we will